Welcome to our first webinar for 2025. As most of you know me, but for those who don't, my name is Peter Miller and I'm a software support analyst for SuperMate. As usual, our product design manager, Reese Hopper, will be joining us to provide an update on the recent compliance release, as well as a demonstration on automated corporate actions. And we'll also be joined by our Chief Technology Officer, Andy Forbes. I would now like to welcome Andy to provide the CTO update on SuperMate, as well as a quick recap of our attendance at the SMSF in Melbourne last week. Thanks, Andy.
G'day everyone. Thank you, Peter. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to talk briefly about the SMSF Association National Conference that was on last week, and then give you a preview of what we've got planned for the rest of 2025. So the last few years, we've been taking our sponsorship of the SMSF Association Conference very seriously, with a great booth location and a commitment to maximise our time with both current clients and potentials. 2025 did not disappoint. The conference had 1,300 in-person attendees, with a further 300 participating virtually. We were very busy. Current clients dropped by to learn about the new web-based SuperMate and how it could benefit them. And many accountants and administrators on other products were keen to learn how SuperMate will reduce their fees and speed up their operation. So 2025, what are we working on now? We're putting the finishing touches on our workflow engine so that you can automate more of the SMSF administration process, plus other enterprise features to help you administrate efficiently with quality and scale. From a data feeds perspective, any minute now we're turning on AMP North's new data feed, using a much more sophisticated EPI 4.3 data format. If you've tried the old North feed and had issues, the new one is really good, much higher quality. We're also working on a new Wilson's data feed and enhancements to Hub24 term deposit handling. Next, the new financial year is approaching fast, so completing our annual compliance release before the 1st of July will be our next priority. At the same time, we're working on a big enhancement to Data Hero. We'll be soon releasing a beta version of Data Hero where you can upload documents into SuperMate, and it will automatically index them. First, it will attempt to identify the client, and then the document type, and then from that will be our next priority. At the same time, we're working on a big enhancement to Data Hero. We'll be soon releasing a beta version of Data Hero where you can upload documents into SuperMate, and it will automatically index them. First, it will attempt to identify the client and then the document type, and then from that, the data associated with that document, such as dates or transactional information. Think of it as the start of a digital mailhouse. There is a cost associated with running this kind of technology, but whilst we're building and learning, it will be free to web SuperMate users, and look out for it in a future webinar. Finally, for the second half of this year, we're targeting property valuations, both automated and in person, across residential, commercial, rural. We'll also be implementing a comprehensive e-signing solution that will help you run your firm, and much, much more. Want something else on our roadmap? Feel free to reach out or send your product suggestions direct from within SuperMate via the feedback option. We'd love to hear your ideas. Every idea submitted goes directly to Reese Hopper, who will be speaking shortly. He's the manager of product design and he reads every single one. Okay, some final words. We've got a huge year ahead. More and more people are realizing the benefits of our web-based SuperMate, saving both time and money. If you're not one of them yet, take a look. I'm sure you'll be surprised about what you find. We're really proud of what we've built and what we're building. So take a look. Thanks again, and back to you, Peter.
Oh, thanks, Andy. Looks like this will be another busy year for SuperMate. All right, I'd now like to welcome Reese to provide an update on the recent compliance release that we've had in SuperMate, along with a demonstration on corporate actions. Over to you, Reese.
Thank you, Peter. As Peter mentioned, I'll be covering off the February 2025 release and basically the releases since our last webinar. Since our last webinar, we have released over 300 enhancements. I won't be covering off all 300 because I do need to cover the automated corporate actions. But it also within those 300 enhancements, we've also bumped up the number of letter tokens available in SuperMate to 677, with another 50 letter tokens waiting to be released. So we have a lot to come. Okay, so the items I'll be covering off for the February 2025 release. The first one is the fund health check. I covered off the fund health check in a previous webinar, but we didn't release it yet, and that was mainly because we had a couple more tweaks to make to it. Now that it has been released, you can find the fund health check on the fund overview. You can find it here for a fund. You jump in. We do have a group of a test profile for the fund health check, where you can check the day-to-day health of the fund, where it'll point out where something doesn't quite look right from a compliance or a processing point of view. For example, compliance-wise, the member doesn't have any TFN. Just a heads up one, a member's turned 65 within the last 3 months, gives you a prompt to have a conversation with the client. General ledger account balance greater than is 0 or greater. So this is probably one where it'll point out there's probably a processing issue. So this one, for some reason, has a negative account balance. But we've also released the ability to, if you're okay with one of these tests failing, you can select them and you can acknowledge it. And then going forward, you won't get prompted to review those test results. Another item, conditional report suites. I gave you a bit of a teaser in our last webinar about conditional report suites. Now, if you navigate to where the report suites where report suites are set up and maintained, you should see that there is a conditions button now, and also if you have modified or added conditions for a letter, a document, or report, it'll have a tag to point out that this one does have conditions on it. If it's a letter, we still have the only generate under these circumstances. So for pensions, it's under these circumstances. For benefit payments, it's for lump sums during the period, or active members, asset accounts. You can have letters modified for it. This one here is a ASF engagement letter for Richard, and I've also used the criteria underneath in the bottom section, where I'm only including the letter, and this also applies to reports, if the relationship of the auditor is ASF. You can use this relationship for advisors. So if you have a certain advisor that wants a certain report in your report suite, but the other advisors don't, you could include those advisors. We have attributes. So if you have a certain attribute on a fund, it'll only include a report or a letter based on that attribute, or trustee type. So trustee type equals corporate trustee. You can add letters or reports based on the trustee type. And where I've seen people use this is if they are the ASIC agent and they want to include certain letters or minutes, resolutions that relate to corporate trustees, or document slots for ASIC invoices, etc., you can use trustee type as a conditional inclusion. The third item, audit documentation download. As Andy mentioned, we are enhancing our DMS. We do have the ability already where you can store documents, link them to members, let members' accounts, financial year, and choose the document types. We've introduced a bulk download button, and with this bulk download button, you can either, for a financial year, you could either download all the documents, or all auditor documents or a certain document type. So say if you want to download a contract note, all the contract notes for 2024, you can download it all in one go. With the all audited documents, you don't, as you're indexing documents, you don't need to flag a document as this is for the auditor. It's just based on document type. So bank statements, contract notes, annual tax statements, any document that the auditor would generally need for the audit is already flagged as visible for the auditor. And when you do this bulk download, it'll download all those documents at once and have it in a zip file for you to send to the auditor. That flag to say whether a document is visible for the auditor or not, that can be modified, customized to suit your firm. The last three items require replace Macquarie Cash Authority form. Macquarie Cash has recently changed the authority form that they use to set up data feeds or provide you access through their online service. We've updated the Macquarie Cash Authority form that gets produced when you're setting up an authority in SuperMate. So now Macquarie will continue to accept the authority forms produced by SuperMate. Automatically creating activity statement workflows. In late last year, I had the activity statements webinar where we went through the ability to lodge activity statements through SuperMate and download the forms that are still outstanding from the ATO. We've introduced a bit of functionality where when you download a new activity statement, it'll trigger a workflow to commence. And this workflow will take you through, will take the users through all the different steps it requires to lodge the activity statement and basically ours is customized. It's simple. It's okay. These are the steps to lodge the activity statement. You can customize it to suit your firm's needs. Yeah, the workflow could include additional steps afterwards where you send a payment slip to the client or authorize the payment yourself if you've, and you can also set up the workflow to figure out whether you have payment authority over the bank accounts, and if you do, send it this way, send it that way. Also producing the activity statements as a workflow, it's just another reminder in the workflow screen where you can track to see where the activity statement lodgement is up to on various steps based on your firm's processes, and you can also see which workflows are allocated to which person. So, in other words, which activity statement is who's responsible for which activity statement, and you can try and balance the workload out. And the last one worth calling out is Haynes Actuarial. You should have seen the media release where Act 2 has purchased Haynes. As a result, we've removed the ability to request an Haynes Actuarial certificate through SuperMate. That's a brief summary of the February 2025 release. I'll be bringing more of the enhancements into the March and the April webinar. But for now, let's move on to corporate actions. I wanted to do a webinar on corporate actions just as to expand everyone's knowledge on the corporate actions, plus some myths, and show the benefits of the actual corporate actions. When it comes to benefits, the reduced processing time, this is a big one. When I first started out in the industry, I was working on a daily service that had about 800 funds. And we were the mail house. And my job was once the mail got sorted, the dividend statements got put on my desk, then I had to go through and process all the dividends manually. And as you can imagine, when Telstra or BHP or one of the popular blue chip companies had a dividend, I would spend easily over an hour just opening up a fund, processing a transaction, opening a different fund, processing a transaction, and just repeating that process. Automated corporate actions takes all that time away. Another benefit is it identifies incorrect data. As I'm educating people and consulting with SuperMate users on getting the best out of the system, sometimes I notice that people don't use corporate actions, and sometimes when I ask them, like, why aren't you using them? They go, okay, well, I've turned on to this one. I'm getting all the wrong results. The cash, the distributions don't match the cash that's coming in, and I mainly see this with unlisted unit trusts with APIR codes. And when I look into it, I go, well, yeah, because you got the wrong APIR code in. And during that conversation, they also point out, oh yeah, I've noticed that the market values are out. And you see it when a unlisted unit trust, so say if CFS has a retail and a wholesale version, when they process the purchase or they set up the account, they accidentally chose the wholesale one, whereas they should have bought the retail unit trust. Market values out, corporate actions, distributions are out. The corporate actions was one of the items that pointed out that, hey, you've got the incorrect data here. Fix it. All of a sudden, all the corporate actions are reconciling automatically. All their market values are correct, don't need to be touched. Another way it identifies incorrect data is unit holdings. Similar situation. I'll be talking to someone. They say, oh, well, all these cash dividends, they're all out. And I go, okay, well, let's bring up a dividend statement. All right, the units are out. So corporate actions, great way to identify if there's incorrect data. And the third benefit of corporate actions is once you start utilizing the automated corporate actions, you start moving towards an exception-based processing model where you're only opening funds when you get triggered to open funds. If you have, so you have 500 funds and you don't need to open up every 500 funds to process transactions. You only have to open up the funds that you get notified that there is an issue. And I'll get into investigating and updating and being notified of issues later on in this webinar. I'll go through, but for now, I'll go through how to, like the steps for when you do get a new fund, or if all your funds are set to manual, how to move them to automatic. And generally the 5 steps are: you do allocate the investor references, you turn on the automatic corporate action, you process all the trades, update results, so you review the results, see what they are compared to expected, and then create the data feeds. Now, obviously, if your funds are on automatic and you've done all these 5 steps in the first year, or the first time you turn the corporate actions on, when it comes to year-to-year processing, you only need to review corporate action results for discrepancies. Because if you already have the data feed going, then you don't need to process trades. And when you have and I'll get into it further, but when you have the data feed set up, it'll be allocating investor references automatically for you. Okay, so I'll jump into SuperMate just to go through all the 5 steps. I shall choose a different super fund. The first things first, allocating investor references. In the investor reference screen, this is where you can add, maintain investor references, and this is the screen where you can allocate investor references. And one of the reasons why it's important to allocate investor references first is that our corporate actions and why they work on a pure automatic method is that they run based on the number of units held per investor reference. So say if these the two Westpac tax packets were held on different HINs, you would get two different corporate actions. If you and if one HIN was set to DRP and one was set to cash, you can set okay, this HIN goes to DRP for this share. This one goes to cash. If you have two HINs and they're both set to cash, then the cash coming in will match exactly against the corporate action that gets produced. And the reason why I allocate the investor reference first is that when you allocate an investor reference or remove an investor reference, that will trigger SuperMate's automatic corporate action process to say, hey, I've got a change in holdings here. I'm going to rerun the corporate action. And this is probably something to highlight where we are different to the other software, where with automatic corporate actions running all the time, if there is a movement in holdings, we will recalculate the corporate action. Whereas the other software, I believe, either don't run on based on how many units I hold, or if you process a corporate action, you have to manually trigger the corporate action to run. And then if you realize that you had the wrong unit holding, you have to go delete the corporate action, then rerun it. Okay, so allocating investor references, quite simple in SuperMate. Jump into allocate investor reference screen. I will highlight all of mine because I know that all the shares are held on the one HIN. But you do have the opportunity to unselect ones that do not relate to the investor reference. And then I just select allocate. The allocation date will go from the earliest buy date, and that just makes sure that the HIN is on all the shares from when they were first purchased. If you have the allocation date can be used if you have, say, a change in HINs and you need to add a new investor reference and then allocate the new HIN from a certain point. Okay, so I'll just allocate the investor references. The second step is turn on automatic corporate actions. So if you are using SuperMate and you do jump into the reconciliation screen and there are a bunch of corporate action cash results on the left side, but there's no corporate actions on the right side. If you navigate to the corporate action screen, there could be a warning that says the method is not set to automatic. When you select switch to automatic, it will convert the process or the corporate action processing model to automatic on the 1st of July of the first open financial year. So you can see here that the first 2024 is the first open financial year. It'll say, okay, corporate actions start processing automatically from 1st of July 2023. Now that I've pushed it to automatic, I can jump into the reconciliation screen, open it up, and you can see I probably should have, I can still point it out. So I've got a whole heap of cash transactions here on the left side. And as those corporate actions are processing, we should see a reduction in the number of cash transactions that are unreconciled. Yep, there we go. So it's finished running. It's quite quick. The next step, processing any missing trades. I do have a missing trade here, but I'm not going to process it because I'm going to refer to this transaction later in the webinar. process trades, and then set up data feed. Now, setting up a data feed, quite easy. Back on the investor reference screen, where the hint is, I can select edit to open up the details. I can choose the broker. So these guys use ComSec, and then enter in the account number, select save. Now that I've added in the institute and the broker number, I can select set up data feed. The date I want contract notes to be loaded from. This system, this data feed, it doesn't occur retrospectively. So if you set it up and you get it set up as today, you'll only receive contract notes for trades that happen from now onwards. Select instructions, get the instructions to provide to the advisor or trustee. So it's quite simple to set up a data feed for a broker account. And as mentioned, once I have set this up, year on year, all I need to do is come in here, check to see if there's any transactions on the right, review the corporate actions, make sure they are correct. Which leads me to corporate action investigations. So from time to time, you will receive corporate actions, or you'll see corporate actions that do not match your expectations. I'll go through a few here, but mainly the ones I see is you'll see the corporate action will say the dividend needs to be this amount, whereas the cash received is a different amount, and you go through and you investigate it. Other times I see it is you have a corporate action, but you don't have cash, and I'll go through the different steps. So the first one, when you do have a corporate action and the details are wrong, the first step is to check the corporate action results screen. When you're working in the reconciliation screen, the easiest way to do it, select the hyperlink, and this brings up the results screen. And here you have the revenue per share, you have the record date, the units held on record date. So the first thing I always do is I grab the dividend statement and I look at the units held at record date. And so if the units held at record date are different, I would go through the cash transactions, look for any unreconciled cash transactions. Is that a trade that's missing? Is it not? So if I minimize this, I can actually see that there was a ComSec NAB purchase that hasn't been processed. This also can be used to highlight if, say, if a fund got an off-market transfer of shares, all of a sudden the dividends are higher than the cash amount. It's a great example of how if you were processing corporate actions or processing dividends manually, you might not have noticed that the unit holdings were different and trigger investigation. It happened to me back when I was processing funds. I did have one fund that each year they were just doing off-market transfers from their personal account, brokering account to their super fund in the form of non-concessional contributions. And the way I picked it up was, hang on, these corporate actions are higher than the corporate action results are higher than the cash amount. Okay, so jumping into the reconciliation screen, unprocessed trades, I'll go NAB. Looking at the contract note that I found, or looking at the dividend statement, I've realized that there are 1,000 units relating to this purchase. So when I select save, what that's going to do, it's going to cause the system to go off and reprocess any corporate actions for NAB where the record date is after that purchase. So right now it's going through and saying, hey, well, it already has. It went through it. Okay, it's this NAB holding changed from 4,050 to 5,050, I'm going to reprocess the results. Another item to look at in this screen is the decision. So this is a Westpac one where I've got, I'm expecting $4,500 in cash. When I look at the dividend statement, I realize that the dividends are set to DRP. So they've nominated to receive DRPs rather than cash. This is quite simple. I can just go change to DRP. I want to make this the decision for all future corporate actions for this share. So it's only for this share. And so whenever a corporate action comes through in the future, it's going to automatically process it as a DRP. And also any corporate actions that have been processed. So if I minimize this, I can see here is another WBC. When I process this, it'll also update that one to a DRP. So I select run, recalculate. It's going off saying, okay, you didn't receive cash, you receive units. I'm now going to calculate the number of units that you receive. So you get 168. If any of this is wrong for any reason, you can select edit, change the amount, change the new units. But I tend to find any ASX listed corporate action, you don't have that result. Okay, so yep, change to DRP, select search. The other time I've seen where a corporate action result is on the right, but there's no cash on the left is when they haven't notified the share registry of what the bank account details are. And this is once again, great endorsement for automatic corporate actions because people often process what they can see. And if they can't see a cash transaction, they don't realize that there is and the units balance at the end of the year, they don't realize they've missed a dividend. And so the answer there was just accrue that income for this year and then notify the registry of the bank account details and clear the accrual once the cash is received. The other items to check to see if the security ID is correct. So I mentioned earlier that the difference between retail and wholesale unlisted unit trusts, they do have different market values and they do distribute different amounts of income, even though they are called something similar. And the final one is checking corporate action parameters. So in the event, I am going to use these four down here, well, one of these four down here as an example. But say if you have a discrepancy, you go, okay, well, the units are right, the security ID is right. Yes, they did receive cash, but I'm still getting a different amount compared to what I should be. There is a slim chance that someone might have come in and actually manually modified the amount for some weird reason. And the other time it could be incorrect is if, and it is quite rare, is if the parameters that are sent through are incorrect. So if you jump in here and you go, okay, well, imputation credit was actually wrong. It should have been a different amount. You look at the distribution statement, it goes, yep, it was actually 0.1. Like the franking is 0.1, not 0.09. Or it was actually unfranked, not franked. And the parameters are wrong. Report as a problem. And when you select report as a problem, it'll draft up an email to send to. It'll draft up an email to send to support. It's always best if you add supporting documentation, so you can go in and go, yep. So we can go, okay, well, yep, we've got the dividend statement. Yep, the parameters are different to what we have in SuperMate, and then we can update our centralized library, which flows through to every single site, reporting a problem. In the meantime, you can just move on. So it's not like, okay, I've got a call for action, it's wrong, I need to, I can't finish this fund. So you can report it, and then you select edit, and you can just modify the details to save it to what you want it to be. That's basically investigating a corporate action in a nutshell. As I mentioned, once it's all automatic and all the trades are going through, generally you won't have to do this, especially when it's an ASX listed share. So say if a corporate action is missing, and this can happen where we receive our data from ASX and Morningstar, but if it relates to a corporate action that if it relates to a corporate action that might need a tax ruling, so say a scheme of arrangement or a demerger. ASX doesn't initially provide us the information up front, so then we do have to wait for a tax ruling. Once the tax ruling comes, we put it in the system. So if there are any corporate actions that are missing, that could be one of the reasons. And I'll just go through the additional steps and the way to figure out if it's because the corporate action is missing from the library or if there's another reason. So jumping back to SuperMate, if there is a corporate action that is missing, I can jump into the corporate action screen, just do a quick check. So I could go ANZ. No, can't see the corporate action here. When I go to the global library, I can jump in here, search ANZ, jump in, and I go, okay, the corporate action is not here. If the corporate action is here in the library but not on the fund, I would check the holdings. Obviously, make sure corporate actions are set to automatic. Check the holdings. Maybe the purchase happened after the record date of the corporate action, and if that's the case, that's why your corporate action is not processing. So then you just jump in, look at the contract note, see if the buy or sale has actually been processed on the correct date, and then once you process it on the correct date, you should see the corporate action come through. If you can't see it here, that just means that it is missing. And once again, shoot an email to support, and they will put it in the corporate action library that sends it out to all sites. And that way it'll be there for every single fund. So that's the steps I just spoke through. You check the corporate action screen. If it exists, check the results. Check if it doesn't exist, check the library, check holdings or contact support. Corporate action myths. So from time to time, I do talk to sites and ask them why they're not processing corporate actions. And this is probably the 5 main reasons. The first one is that people say, oh, I can't turn corporate actions on automatic because I don't have data feeds. So the corporate actions that get processed will be incorrect. Well, I showed before that if you do have corporate action results that are incorrect because you have the incorrect holdings, when you process that trade, the system will automatically update. So you can turn it on for funds that you don't have a data feed for, but I do highly recommend setting up data feeds. The corporate actions require 1 cent modification. This one's an interesting one. We do have a couple of tolerances in SuperMate. So under settings, system defaults, if I search tolerance, you do have this one here that relates to the cents, and you also have this one relating to the number of days. Now, when people say, "Hey, I've got these corporate actions," the system's calculated at $450, but the cash was $450.01, and it's not automatically matching. I generally find it's relating to this value being 0. I always recommend it being increased to a few cents, so then the system picks it up. So say if I jump into a reconciled item, I change this one to, I'll cancel it. Reconcile. So if I have these two right now, they're the same. But if I change it to, and this might not work because I'm actually manually modifying the corporate action first. But say if this is 1 cent off, I can just jump up here, run automatic reconciliation. And since it's a corporate action, it's going to say, hey, I'm 1 cent off. I'm going to automatically reconcile it for you. Okay, perfect. Did work. Yeah, so that 1 cent discrepancy, the system can handle it, and it will just modify the underlying components for you. Who are the next two myths? I think are combined. It's I have no control over corporate actions. I've got no visibility over corporate action results. I find that a lot of this comes down to trust, and it's people who either haven't used corporate actions or have just started using corporate actions, and they're used to processing revenue manually, and they know, hey, I process this BHP dividend for this amount, and it has this franking. I know that is correct, and that could work if you're a one-user site, or if you have high trust in your co-workers. But generally, when you're working with high enterprise organizations where you have hundreds of staff, people tend to not know everyone, and they check and they need to validate their work anyway. But also, when it comes to no control, you can see the decisions. You can jump into the corporate action screen. You can jump in here. You can see all the corporate actions. You can see how they were processed. It just means you're not actually having to do the processing. And we have a bunch of tests that get run. So if I type in corporate action, we have a bunch of tests that run that are validating the data. You can jump in, you can check the test results. We also have multiple reports that you can run. So where is it? Yeah. So the tax statement detail, I can run this, and I can review that one. I also got the income comparison, generate that report. Yep. Okay, so I've generated both reports, and this is what you can use to go, okay, well, yep, the corporate action has been processed automatically. If I want to go check every dividend to make sure that they are all correct, I can just jump through the detailed tax statement, check that all the franking and the unfranked amounts are correct. I can jump into the investment income comparison report, where it compares what's in the general ledger to what the corporate actions have picked up. So when it comes to control and visibility, It's still there. It's just you're processing a lot quicker. And the last myth, this is one I love, is that when people say, hey, I can process quicker, I will throw down the gauntlet right now and say, if anyone thinks they can process corporate actions manually quicker than I can do automatic corporate actions, send me an email, we'll have a race. I'll just quickly jump back to SuperMate, just knock off a couple other cool things about corporate actions. You might have noticed when I had the reconciliation screen open, I had 4 corporate actions that have run, and they are future dated. So as soon as you know the record, well, as soon as we know the record date, we will run corporate actions. And when the cash comes in, it matches off automatically. All the system checks where they go, hey, do you have any unreconciled transactions? They don't pick up future dated corporate actions. So this will not be skewing your stats. So that's quite helpful, seeing what revenue that a fund is expected to receive based on ASX announcements that have already occurred. I have one here, which is an exercise of rights. This one I like highlighting because people quite often they say, you know, how do I get rid of a exercise of rights? I don't want the corporate action to run because I didn't accept it. You actually open up the rights acceptance corporate action, and you just select lapse. And when you select lapse, it will say, okay, you didn't take up these rights, these options. Therefore, I'm going to sell the rights and options for costs or $0, depending on how the corporate action is set up, so that there won't be any CGT impact. And just to highlight that situation, if I search here, OVT, these are the 2 corporate actions I'm talking about. So you do have the rights one that is participating. This one will be issuing the rights in OVTN based on looking at the parameters. It's a 0.33 ratio, so 1 to 3. Get 43 rights, and then the next corporate action is, okay, did you accept or did you let these rights lapse? And you do have the lapse value, where if there are lapse values issued, if you do receive money for a lapse value, it will come in here. And depending on whether it's renounceable or not, it gets processed as capital gains or unfranked income. So I might actually now throw it back to Peter. Thank you, everyone, for listening to corporate actions and the 2025 releases we've done so far.
Thanks, Reece, for that informative demonstration. I'm sure you all found it useful, and it just demonstrates the speed and how useful automated corporate actions can be. So don't forget, for those of you still using Classic, you are also able to automate your corporate actions as well. Okay, so just wanted to remind you that there is a help portal available in SuperMate that's able to be accessed by clicking the question mark in the top right hand of your screen and then selecting the help portal to find answers to frequently asked questions, or even just to explore the capabilities in web. So Andy's provided a preview of the improvements we're planning to bring to SuperMate for this year, and Reece has given an insight into how to use corporate actions effectively. So for those of you not already using SuperMate, I'm sure you're thinking, this looks pretty good and it's pretty comprehensive, but I'll bet it costs a bomb. Well, you may be surprised to know that the basic subscription starts at $11 per fund per month plus GST. And this gives you access to automated corporate actions, Macquarie Bank data feeds, broker data feeds, registry reconciliations with computer share, linked market services and boardroom, Data Hero to read bank statements and create the bank transactions from them, property worksheets and standard letter templates, which all reduce the manual intervention and hence the time that you need to provide the outstanding service to your clients. Not only that, but for an additional $4.75 a month, you can get all this as well as data feeds from over 100 other banks and financial institutions. As well, once you're subscribed to SuperMate, you become part of the Super Concepts family, and as such have access to our SMSF education services provided by Craig Stone, who has previously been a guest on these webinars. So that's it. We're over to how we're looking for time. We might have time for a quick couple of questions if anyone has any questions to come through. All right, so we have one question coming through. We have bank feeds, and if we add a broker data feed, what's the extra cost? So with that, if it's a Macquarie, well, to start off, broker data feeds in web, if it's in web, broker data feeds are no additional cost. They're part of the basic package. If you have, if you're doing it in Classic, then it is an additional, I think it's $4 or $5 a month. That's okay. Let's go up to that one. So next question over to you, Reese. It is, can you explain again about allocating references and using the earlier date?
Yeah, sure. So when allocating investor references, there's a date for when you can allocate it to. In the online portal, on the online version of SuperMate, we automated it to pick the earliest tax packet date. So if you have, 50 shares, multiple tax packets, it'll find the earliest date that a tax packet existed, or its purchase date, and it'll allocate the investor reference from that date. And generally, like if a super fund only has had one broker, generally the first purchase date we find is when the HIN should be applied to it, but you also have the freedom of using whatever date you want. I always recommend just when the date actually the broker actually had the tax packet, because when we do when I actually added that investor reference, the system was smart enough to go off to contact the registries and say, hey, I want the balances of all the shares relating to this investor reference on this date and the previous 30th of June. So if you put in today's date, it'll actually only request today's date. But if you request prior to the previous 30th of June, when you go to do the 2024 financials, all your registry, the registries that supply the balances, you'll have automatic confirmations to say, yeah, your holdings are correct. And then you don't have to go off and manually check your holding balances.
Okay, hopefully that's provided the answer. Next question is it possible for SuperMate to only display a summary of share portfolio? So instead of listing every share holdings, e.g. CommSec portfolio with 80 shareholdings, does SuperMate have to list all 80 shareholdings, or can SuperMate list CommSec as the only asset and therefore only one franked and unfranked transaction, etc.?
Yeah, sure. I can handle this one, Peter. Yes, the answer is yes. It is possible. We do have a concept called simple platforms, which are a one-line asset. You can call it CommSec. Any money transferred to CommSec, you could just say this is an addition to the platform. The one thing you'll need is either to make it easy to process this is either a capital gains reports from CommSec. So if CommSec says provides okay, these are the capital gains, and you can rely on that and you can trust it. That's one of the things you require. The second item is a tax statement that the auditor will accept and it's easy to process. for the income, for the end of year income. So you can do that. I don't normally see it happening with share portfolios. Normally, I generally see that occur with like wraps or platform providers rather than broker accounts.
Cool. Thanks for that, Reece. There are a couple of other questions in the chat, but we've run out of time. So what we'll do is we'll get back to them via email and publish them for everyone, so everyone gets an advantage of it. So now, thank you all once again for joining. Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Reece, for your input. And don't forget that if you're interested or would like a demonstration that is more specific to the way that your business operates, please get in contact. Thank you all very much.